Welcome to Free Hit, an FPL podcast. I'm your host, Chris, joined by my co-host, Jace. And Jace, it was a high-scoring game week 27 this week. All the top five had great fixtures. I had 73 points and ended up on a red arrow, which I'm assuming you were kind of in that boat as well. But always kind of fun when it seems like everybody scores points. I don't know, how are you feeling this week?
Yeah, 71 points with a -4 and also a red arrow. The thing told me I needed at least 75 points for to be safe, to not lose rank. And that was just baffling to me because I thought I killed it this game week, but I'm looking at other people's points totals and I'm just blown away. And I also left 24 points on my bench total. So would have been a great week for me to use the bench boost, but
yeah, the Fulham clean sheet there really, that's, what is that, 14 points on your bench between Leno and Robinson, and then Newcastle, surprisingly, a clean sheet after being terrible for 2 months.
Dan Burn with some bonus points too, it's just like, man,
just how the FPL got stirred up this week. Well, we will talk about each of our teams real quick. Just wanted to give an update from last week. So as most people know, we now have 4 fixtures confirmed for game week 29. That's in 2 weeks. Those are West Ham Villa, Brentford Burnley, Luton Forest, and Spurs Fulham. Given the results in the FA Cup and kind of who's playing in game week 29 and who's not, have you changed your opinion at all from last week? Kind of free hit versus non-free hit. Kind of like, what are you thinking?
Still think that the free hit is the right way to go for me specifically, because even if I do the math and I take some more aggressive hits than I've already been taking, I'll still only get 8 players on the field. And to me, it's just not worth taking all the hits to get 8 players on a field when I can just use the free hit. I know you are in a little bit of a different boat where you could get a decent team out instead of free hitting and maybe free hitting at a later double game week. Are you still leaning towards that, or are you moving more towards the free hit?
Yeah, I think I'm going to play through it. As of last week, I had 5 players playing in game week 29 and then 2 free transfers this week, which we'll talk about. So I have 7. I can get to 9 without taking hits and also cover the major captaincy candidates. Like I'll have Tony, Watkins, and Son in 29. So I feel like 9 players, but if I have all 3 of those guys, that's going to be a completely fine team. I'm a little bit short in midfield, and the next couple of transfers I make will probably be targeted in that area. But yeah, as someone that had a wild card early and that went Tony and Reguilon in recent weeks, I think it makes sense for me to try and play through it. I also did some more research this week just on the upcoming blanks and doubles, and it seems like 34 is a double game week for teams that suck, which means it's going to be a lot of assets that are low owned that I'm probably not going to want to own. So if I can play through 29, I could have a really high upside free hit in game week 34 and then save the bench boost for game week 37.
You're going to play it as it lies. Yeah, until the stinkers play in 34. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. Yeah, so I might have triple Palace or triple United.
That's right.
However it turns out.
Triple Palace defense. That can't go wrong. Can't go wrong.
Right. Yeah, I'll get the back 3, Anderson, Gahey, and Richards back there.
That's right.
I am surprised looking at your team. I see, what do you have, 5? You have 2 Fulham, 1 Villa, Udogie, and Son from Spurs. And you have 2 more transfers until, so yeah, I guess you would get to 7, and that would probably be not quite enough.
I've got one free transfer. I can take a -4. Like I said, to me, it seems like I'm already hurting for points, so I don't want to dig myself another hole. Like we were saying earlier at the beginning, even with 71 points, it's like not even a green arrow. So it's a bit of an uphill battle here. I think for everyone involved. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you do with it though. Like I'm actually very excited to see 29, and I'm kind of glad for the sake of this podcast that we're on opposite sides of this, given where our teams are. The free hit team could go nuts, and it also could be a crap game week because honestly, these 4 teams, Villa and Spurs obviously are great, but everybody else is, kind of mid to low table. So yeah, what are you thinking on your second wild card then if you're free hitting?
Man, I don't even know if I want to think about it just yet because of all the information we still need to get right. If I hadn't moved on Solanke so early last week, I would have saw that he was injured. I wouldn't have traded Alvarez for him. Alvarez would have got the assist and the point. I wouldn't have taken the -4, so I'd be +9 right now in the lower 80s. Right, hindsight's 2020, but like I said, they're definitely your pros and cons to moving early, and I think I moved too early last week, so I'm just trying to wait it out, get all the information I can, and just set myself up for success. Another reason I don't want to dead end my team is I have a lot of value built into some players like Palmer, Watkins. I've been on both of them almost all season, right? So I've got a lot of value built into them, and I don't know that I can make the moves I want to make on a wild card if I sell them and chip them out. Granted, I wouldn't be moving Watkins necessarily, right? But still, I have a lot of value in some of these players that I want to maintain. So that's another reason why I think free hitting's better off for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially Watkins, who's 8 million earlier in the season and now is almost 9, I think. So that's a good one to keep an eye on for folks that plan to move some players around or sell Watkins, bring Watkins.
And I don't even know if I want a wild card in game week 30, right? I have a really good team. I need to make a couple moves, right? Potentially Saka was going to come into my team at some point in the next 3 weeks, but if he's injured, as we saw earlier today, who knows what that does to the rest of the players. Maybe I was right, and since I'm on Martinelli, I just keep him, and that's where everybody goes because he's been a good foil to Saka in recent game weeks. So, like I said, just going to wait and see all the information. As you mentioned, there's a double game week coming up in 34, so definitely want to put myself in a position to utilize those assets. But I'm more concerned with double game week 28, which is just 4 or 5 days away. So that's where I'm putting all my energy right now. I just had a whole 3-hour plane ride to think about it. Probably thought too much, but I'm ready to get my ideas out here.
Okay. I'm excited to hear what a 3-hour plane ride turned up for a Burnley and Luton double game week. It's not the most exciting double, but yeah, those two teams do double this week. Speaking of transfers, I figured we could kind of pull up your team here. I don't fault you for Alvarez to Solanke this week. Alvarez was a sub. He happened to get an assist, and Solanke had Burnley plus the double. You're hurting for transfers right now. You're basically just moving that forward a week. I have no problem with that. Just didn't work out. But yeah, do you want to recap your kind of team this week, points wise, and then also transfers and etc.
Yeah, and it's Bournemouth double game week, not Burnley, right?
Yeah, Bournemouth Luton. Did I say Burnley?
Oh, you scared me. I was like, I was thinking about the wrong things on this flight.
Burnley Luton earlier in the season. What was that? Week 8 was the Burnley Luton double. Also underwhelming.
The stinker. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, for game week 27, like I said, I had 71 points after the -4. Quick math there, 60. 67? Jeez, not so quick math.
That was really good. That was really good.
0.3 million left in the bank. I didn't use a chip. Kelleher in goal. Again, I chose the right goalie, even just by a point. I just wish my goalkeepers would decide who's going to have a good week and who's not, and not have a good week at the same time every time. But chose Kelleher right again. Udogie with 2, Virgil with 6, Gabriel with 6. Midfield of Martinelli, Palmer, Son, De Bruyne, everybody returned except for KDB, although he should have had like 10 assists. So again, I would captain KDB again, looking at the stats every week because he was there, and Holland just happened to luck into the goal. But forward line of Solanke, Watkins, and Holland, Solanke being the only one that did not return. So all in all, good week. Robinson, Leno, and Byrne all on my bench who returned, and Garnacho with a blank. So I think overall I'm happy with how I started. If I could go back again, I don't know that I make any different changes. The goals just didn't come for KDB's teammates. So, that's where I'm at. I really thought I was going to differentiate myself there with a KDB haul He really tried, but it just wasn't in the cards, you know. So
What swayed you to captain KDB? Was it the Luton game midweek?
it was the force. I just had this gut feeling that said Captain KDB when I was
Yeah.
looking at it the night before. The armband was on Holland. I didn't captain Watkins because I thought there's no way he was going to haul again and again and again, but he did, and he continues to. Might be player of the season. I think goal contribution wise, he is leading the league in
Yeah.
total goal involvements. So
Yes.
so that's why I went with KDB. It was a gut feeling. I thought so many people had sold him and were going to be off him this week that it was going to be a good way for me to differentiate myself, maybe claw back some points and some rank. And again, if some of those goals fall in some point blank sitters for City that didn't find the back of the net, different conversation, but that's how the game goes. But I'm pretty happy with how I played the game week. Hindsight's 2020. You said you don't blame me for the Alvarez Solanke transfer. It cost me 9 points in the end, which is how these things tend to go. But that's just how it is. But 71 points. I thought I was doing all right. Turns out I was just bang average, and isn't that just the story of my life?
9 points in game week 27, but I bet you make that all back up next week in the double game week. I did want to talk to you about your second transfer, because you mentioned you took a -4. You brought Son in for Gross, who we talked about at length last week as being this very good asset, but very weird mid-price midfielder, and you went up to a premium. Talk to me about that decision.
I was even texting you before I made that call, and I was like, I don't know if I need to bring Son in or Saka in for Gross. I ended up not being able to get to Saka. I think I was like 0.1 or 0.2 off being able to bring him in and do the Solanke transfer too. So that's mostly why I went with Son. Like I said, I didn't want to get rid of KDB just yet. I still don't think I want to get rid of him, but I'm glad Sonny returned. That was a great result for Spurs against the Palace. So I think you got to play Sonny, especially with the news that Richarlison was injured. It was like a no-brainer, out of position midfielder, and Sonny plays so well in the 9 role. So that's why I went with Sonny. And like you said, we talked with Gross. It was just hard to keep him and make the moves I want in the coming weeks and not have that money in the bank. So that's why I sent him on his way. He returned for me. He paid for himself. So I was happy with that transfer. I'd make it again. And who knows, maybe I bring him back after game week 30. But happy I brought Son in, and he was really only one that worked out as far as money in the bank goes. So.
Yeah, when we were talking about it, I felt like Martinelli was going to cover the Saka points because they were playing Sheffield. And as long as Martinelli started, I think, they were going to score 5-6, and they absolutely did that.
My heart skipped a beat when I looked at the team sheet today because I didn't see him initially, but he's always at the bottom. So I just missed him. So I was happy he started. The only other player I was thinking of was, instead of bringing in Solanke this week, was bringing in a Fulham forward. Since we talked about it last week, I thought they looked really good value, good differentials, and sure enough, Muniz returned as we thought he would. But it's hard to ignore the Solanke double coming up. And like you said, I didn't just buy him for this game week. I bought him for the next one and the ones after that. So the Fulham attackers are still on my watch list, but pretty happy with the moves I made, and I hope they continue to pay off in the upcoming game weeks.
Yeah, you want me to hit you with some FPL math? I think it'll make you feel better.
Yeah, do the FPL math.
Let's say that Alvarez to Solanke was your free transfer, and that Gross to Son was your -4. So if you take Son -4, you had 3. I think Gross had 1 off the bench. So you're +2 on the additional transfer where you decided to take a hit. And that is our segment called FPL math.
That's going to be where you input the applause or the audience laughter track, right there.
Yeah, we'll have to queue up a sound effect for our new segment, FPL math.
There we go. All right, talk me through yours then.
Yeah, I had some interesting decisions this week since I was a little bit more set up for game week 29. I also have 5.7 in the bank right now after this week's transfers, so I'm kind of feels good, like a power position here for transfers. So The first guy I was looking to get out was Estupidon, and I was considering Gabriel, Senesi, and Doughty, which I think were all great picks. I luckily dodged the Senesi injury, but I also dodged the Gabriel clean sheet. I went Doughty. Ultimately chose him because he's doubling in 28 and plays in game week 29. So if I'm committed to playing through 29, he was kind of the obvious defensive transfer. However, during this game, it was kind of funny. Bell, who's my bench, like fifth center back, who I'm also trying to play in game week 29, got injured. Doughty moved to left center back, and it was disaster for both of those players within the first 15 minutes of the match. But even as a center back, he took every single corner and every single set piece for Luton. And I think getting a wing back or fullback taking set pieces and corners for sub 5 million, I almost don't care what team you play for or what your fixture list is, etc. I think that's just a slam dunk every single time. He also they made a change in the second half when they started playing better against Villa, and he moved back to a left wing back. So I feel pretty good about that transfer, and he did return this week with an assist on a set piece, which was great. So I don't know. I felt like that one was very obvious. Like anything else you would have done there.
No, and I don't know if this is just me, but I get almost as much joy when a like highly bought player that I didn't buy like bombs or gets injured or whatever, like the soccer earlier. Like I get almost as much joy from that as I do from like my players returning. I get a lot of like, put it right there. So that's kind of how I felt with the Senesi injury early on and the yellow cards that were flying and all around the Bournemouth game. So I think it definitely makes this next week interesting. But yeah, I think getting Estupinian out was a good call. And Doughty was the obvious replacement. I remember you texted the group and we're like, God dang, he's playing center back, like FML. And sure enough, he returned. So it's like insert eye roll here.
Yeah, it's a fun game, isn't it? And yeah, I think if I was not free hitting in 29, I would have gone Senesi. That's like just totally luck that I had got to avoid that additional transfer. But then Bell is hurt too, which I don't know if I would use a transfer on him or if I would just play with 8 in game week 29 instead of 9. I mean, he's going to get 1 point anyway, but something to like keep in mind because I do have one less player potentially now for 29 than I thought I was going to. But overall, good transfer. And then my second transfer, I had 2 frees, was KDB to Son. I was not sure whether to hold KDB one more week or not after his monster performance against Luton Town. And then we got the news that Richarlison was injured. And like you said, I think Son at 9 was just too much to pass up. So as soon as Richarlison was out, I think that was like Friday, I pulled the trigger on the second transfer and I almost captained him too. I think the captaincy chip like moved between Saka, Holland, and Son at least 3 different times on Friday. Eventually I settled on Holland. So the full team, Areola 13 pointer. Not a lot of folks started Areola this week. I just felt like this week he was going to save a penalty. And he did. So kudos to me on that pick. Branthwaite with 1, Doughty with 5, Reguilon with 4, 3 returns and 4 for Reguilon. I've been really happy with him so far. Palmer with 5, Foden with 15, Saka with 7, Son with 7. I think those are the best 4 midfielders in the game right now until Salah comes back, like hands down. So pleased with that.
I would agree with that.
And then Solanke 2, Tony 2, Holland cap for 12, which got me to 73 points overall, which was pretty much a gray arrow. I'm still getting killed by Ollie Watkins and the Arsenal defense. I can't get away from them. I looked it up today. In game week 24, I transferred out Ollie Watkins for Erling Haaland, and I kept Ivan Toney. And the reason I did that was because Watkins was supposed to blank in 29. Toney was going to play in 26 and 29, in addition to doubling in 25. So I thought that Toney and Watkins were similar assets, and Toney was going to play more fixtures. And it turns out that Watkins is basically on the same tier as Son and Saka. Like, I think I just completely misclassified where he was at. He also has 37 points in the last 4 weeks, compared to Toney's 17. So it's 20 points kind of difference on that transfer, which is crazy. The Arsenal defense has also kept 3 clean sheets out of 4. So I think if you took me back to game week 24, I don't know that I would do anything different, because I don't know that the information was there to say that, in these 4 weeks, Watkins was going to just double return every single week. But it has been, I feel like the rest of my team has been awesome, and I can't get green arrows because of those 2 players.
Yeah, but to be honest, man, I think you don't have an Arsenal defender, one of the 2 center backs, and you don't have Watkins, and you still scored 74 points in the game week. I mean, that's still kind of impressive. So I still feel like you're playing the game the right way here and hedging in the right areas, and I'm sure Tony's going to come good eventually. But I do take a lot of joy when Tony blanks, because I know you have him.
Like I said, it's really Gabriel, to a lesser degree Saliba, and Watkins. Like, those are the 3 players that I haven't been able to overcome as a group. But
well, to be fair, of all the Arsenal players that scored today, Gabriel and Saliba weren't one of them. So that's bonus, right?
I have a clean sheet. It doesn't do a whole lot for me.
Come on, man. I'm not a miracle worker.
I will say, luckily for me, Arsenal is home to Brentford in 28. That could possibly be another clean. Maybe Tony will go in there and wipe it out for me. 29 is the blank, and 30 is Man City away. So if you're on Arsenal defense right now, I think there's a chance that they aren't the best defensive assets, at least for 29 and 30. And potentially I can make up some ground by the time everybody else comes back on Arsenal. I might be on Gabriel there too, and sort of mitigate that points risk. So, okay, those are our teams. Let's move on to burning questions from all of the matches in game week 27. Let's start with the Manchester derby. City 3, United 1. Phil Foden brace in this game, I feel like, has been the big story here. I'm going to ask you a real life football question, and then we can turn to a fantasy Premier League question. My real life football question is, after the game, Guardiola said that Phil Foden is the best player in the Premier League right now. So my question is Phil Foden the best player in the Premier League right now?
No, I wouldn't go that far, Pep. I think it's hard to argue with Ollie Watkins because of his goal contributions. I mean, he's been involved in more goals this season than any other player. So to me, and he's not playing in a Man City squad, right? I get it. Aston Villa are really good this year, but it's not like they've been phenomenal for the last 10 years, and they don't have that well-established framework that City has, and Emery's just come in. So, I think Watkins would be my pick for player of the season right now. But Foden's not far away, and he probably is the definitive City midfielder. I think he's definitely City's best player this season by far. I mean, he always comes up with a goal when they need one. It's crazy. I mean, Stockport Iniesta, he's always coming through for you.
Is Phil Foden a top 5 player in the Premier League right now?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes?
For sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's definitely worth the discussion, I think, as the best player on potentially the best team. But what you're saying is just pure numerical goal contributions this year. Ollie Watkins might
best player, it gets complicated, right? Because defenders aren't going to return a ton of goals, right? If you were telling me who are the best defenders in the league this season, I mean, Virgil van Dijk, Mickey van de Ven, Christian Romero, Destiny Udogie, Pedro Porro, and then, the Arsenal.
So the Spurs backline.
That's right. All 4 of them. I'd put them up against anyone. No, but I think attacking returns wise, I think Watkins is 1. Foden's definitely top 5. Maybe he's 2. If Erling Haaland wasn't injured for that spell, he's probably up there too. I think he still leads the league in goals scored. So he's definitely in that conversation also. Maybe Sonny's up there, but I don't think he's the best player in real life Premier League or fantasy Premier League.
Okay. Let's switch to fantasy then, because I think Foden being a legitimately really good pick is interesting, because I think now for the first time later in the season, I'm thinking 3-5-2 as opposed to 3-4-3. For me, the best midfield in the game is Salah, Son, Saka, Palmer, and then probably Garnacho, whatever, like 5.0 mid you want to throw in there. And that's a 3-4-3, right? If Foden is better than the third striker option, then I think Palmer becomes the fifth midfielder in that group. You would add Foden. I just don't know that there's going to be enough, or lack thereof, I should say, striker options later in the season to get Foden into the team. I mean, what about you? Do you think he's a must own? Like, if you don't have Phil Foden right now, is he a priority transfer? I think no, from a fantasy standpoint.
Not right now. Game week 30 wild card though, absolutely, I would bring him in over KDB. In? Yeah, I mean that saves me definitely over $1 million that I can put elsewhere. So I think Foden is definitely a really good KDB replacement. I don't think you have to sell your soul to bring him in this week though. You know, he's blanking in the next game week, and we still don't know what Pep's kind of final tweaks are, right? There's still the Champions League they have to play. And does Alvarez come in and push someone else out wide, right? Like there's all these things. Like even in the game, I thought Bernardo Silva would go out wide, and De Bruyne ended up playing left wing most of that second half. So it's just weird to see what positions they're going to take up and how Pep's going to play with it. So no, I don't think he's a must-have right now, but I do think you're going to want him for the run-in.
I think the point you said about positioning is what makes Foden more interesting to me now, because I think the prevailing narrative is when KDB is healthy, KDB plays centrally and Foden like gets stranded on the wing. And what I saw against United was KDB overlapping wide. They would almost sort of like interchange positions, which I think gave Foden the freedom and the confidence to make a lot more runs on goal. And I think just even eye test wise, I mean, he's clearly better in the center of the field than he is on the wing, but certainly fantasy wise, I think he's a much more dangerous player. So yeah, if he continues to play centrally, it's going to be really hard to keep him out of the team. I just think there's so many good options in the premium tier category that, again, he's one of these mid-price midfielders. I just don't quite know how to fit in unless I went 3-5-2. Then he would be a pick for sure.
But then you're losing out on one of those top four strikers, right? And it's probably going to be Solanke or Tony, right? Because you got to have Haaland because everybody else has him, and you're going to lose that point total that he gets. And you got to have Watkins at this point, I think. So, you know, I don't know if that's the gamble you want to make, but I think you could probably bring him in because we don't know anything about Salah yet. So I know he's probably going to be healthy, but we saw this game that Klopp's not afraid to start the kids. So
right.
I don't know that Salah's a must-have anymore. Granted, I've been wrong about that multiple times in my FPL career, so don't take that Salah piece as gospel.
We got a leak here live on the podcast. Salah starts according to Jace. I think the point about strikers too, like I was trying to think about if I did play 3-5-2 later in the season, what would that look like? Watkins fixtures get a lot worse after game week 31, and Solanke's get a lot worse after game week 33. I mean, you roll your eyes at me, but Watkins returns the last 5 weeks. He's had four games with returns: Luton, Forest, Fulham, and Sheffield. I don't know that he's a lock to return against the other top 6 teams in the league. And when you compare that to the run-ins for Darwin Isak, Tony, and Iwani from Forest, I think there's an argument you would be comping Foden to one of those guys and not necessarily Watkins. But Ollie Watkins has proved me wrong so many times this season that he could just be a monster and it doesn't matter who he's playing. So
yeah, that's a good segue into our next question here, Chris.
Yeah, let's move on to our next game, which was Aston Villa 3, Luton Town 2. The question here is, does Watkins have a player of the season case similar to Phil Foden? And I think the answer is yes. He has the most goal involvements in the league this season, which we've mentioned. And even though he played Luton, I've been impressed with him all season. It seems like has improved his ability to make smart runs that help Villa transition from defense to attack and counterattack effectively. I've seen him make a lot of runs almost down the channel, down the sideline, hold up the ball, and then get the wingers involved in the attack, which to me really shows his growth as a player. At the beginning of the season, I thought of Watkins as a guy that, is an athlete. He's going to play 90 minutes. He's going to get it on the end of balls in the box. But this year, I think he's really become kind of a total striker, a total footballer. I think he absolutely should be in the conversation for player of the season. What did you see from this one, Jace?
Well, like you said, he played Luton this week. It was 3-2. It was a great game. I don't know if you watched that one, but
Yeah.
it was one of those again where Luton gave up goals early and then came roaring back. I'm going to hate to see them leave the Premier League because I think they're a ton of fun to watch, but they just can't get their stuff together early enough. What other players did you see in this game outside of Watkins? Is something where you can sacrifice maybe a Watkins and bring in the Douglas Luiz to make up for those points because he seems to be returning just as frequently as Watkins does.
Yeah, the two guys we mentioned last week, Louise and Bailey, I thought were quite good in this game. Someone actually on the other side for Luton stands out quite a bit to me. If I asked you who was the fifth highest scoring striker in Fantasy Premier League this year, it'd probably take you a long time to say Morris, but it's Morris.
It's the perfect time for the Carlton dance, Carlton Morris, let's go.
The Carlton Morris. It seems like lately he's also been on a great run of form. Luton are very dangerous on set pieces. I think they have the fourth most set piece goals in the league. And it seems like, especially with the introduction of Doughty, they've had really good service on those. He's got a double. He plays in 29. Luton's fixtures aren't great after that. But again, you're going to bring Holland back in game week 31 anyway. So I think he's worth a shout, even like against a Watkins or another player at striker from this game.
With Holland playing with Holland playing Liverpool this game week, would you take him out for Carlton Morris?
I think it's an option. I'm not going to do it, but if somebody told me that, hey, I went
because
Holland
it's like you said, it's Liverpool blank Arsenal. Holland is not the big game striker, right? He's been lately here I'm going to get a consolation goal for the FPL fam at the end of the game. Luton FA Cup match aside. Luton play in game week 29, right? So Holland, Morris, as long as you keep that money in the bank, you can buy him back after the Arsenal fixture or in your wild card around game week 30 if that's what you plan to do. I mean, I don't hate that.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, at least to consider. And that's, again, only if you want to fade single game week Ollie Watkins over double game week Carlton Morris. But I'm just saying, based on like total points this season and especially recent form, as good as Watkins has been, I think there's a pretty strong case for Morris. The other Luton, just to kind of like wrap up the double game week picks. Yeah. Doughty, I think obviously on set pieces, corners makes a lot of sense. And then the only person I said was Bell. If he's already a fifth defender, I wouldn't necessarily use a transfer on him, but I can't see myself bringing in any other Luton asset other than those three guys.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you want to bring them into. If you like your defenders and you want a midfield option, Ross Barkley's only $5 million and right. He is like prime for a return. I mean, he's all over the XGI index, whatever. He's getting shots on target. He's creating stuff. A lot of it's assisting the assister at this point, right? But I think he is prime for a return, especially with the double game week coming up. Personally, I'm thinking of sending Garnacho home and bringing back Ross Barkley in, like I mentioned, I'd do a couple weeks ago. But I'm stuck between him or a Luton defender. I don't know if I have enough to bring Doughty in, right, and have no money left in the bank for one of my 4.4 defenders, or I can do the straight swap for Garnacho to Ross Barkley. So I think that if you got a spot in the midfield for a double game weeker, worst case scenario, Chris, he gets 4. He gets 4 or he gets 3, right? If he picks up a yellow, whatever. But he's going to start and he's going to play 60 minutes both games. So that's almost like a return, right? I mean, what Reguilon gets you this week? 4. So that's with an actual return. And he's got 2 games. So I'm just saying that there's some benefit for the double game week person over a single game weeker with a difficult fixture.
Yeah, I suppose I could get on board with that probably without a hit. If that's a -4,
Yeah,
and you're going to have to transfer him out later, then
exactly.
that's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the double game week, let's move on to Bournemouth 2, Burnley 0. If you were a Senesi owner this week, I don't think that applies to either of us. I think if you're free hitting in game week 29, you just get another Bournemouth defender to cover those games, and they have good fixtures after 29 as well. And then I think if you're not free hitting in game week 29, you probably didn't get Senesi, but if you did, it's I think obviously Doughty in that case. Anybody else you would consider there? I think that's pretty straightforward.
I put in my notes Semenyo. I liked him when he was at Bristol City because he was kind of a star player when I was living just down the road from Ashton Gate there when I was in England. So I followed them that season, went to a couple of matches, and he was electric. And he's been doing okay. He got a return this week with the double game week coming up. I know he's playing on the wing, so not a true striker, and those striker spots that we've got are pretty sacred. But double game week, he got an early yellow and he was left on, so he's got the confidence of the manager. What do you think? And he's only 4.5 million.
I think I still like Morris better, but if you're going to play the free hit in 29, maybe a case for Semenyo because he has the better fixtures after. He's not immediately a problem, but like I said, Morris is the 5th highest scoring striker in the game. And I think that's difficult to ignore if striker is the place you want to go with a double game week asset.
I think if Semenyo was a winger and a midfielder, I would definitely bring him in this week.
Sure.
It sucks that he's a forward because that's not where he's playing at. But
yeah, he's sort of
I get it.
Reverse out of position guy, and I think that does make it challenging. The other guy I was thinking about was Tavernier from Bournemouth, which I think he's come up a lot. He doesn't have great underlying metrics from like an expected goal involvement, but I thought he played pretty well against Burnley. He had a cross to Solanke that probably should have been an assist and a pretty decent shot attempt as well across 2 games. Again, it would sort of be that Garnacho Barkley spot where if it's your 5th midfielder, I think that's probably okay. But I don't think I would transfer out, somebody like a Palmer to get Tavernier in for this double game week. What do you think of him?
Yeah. No, I was looking elsewhere on Bournemouth's bench to see where I could get another double game weeker in, and he was on the list. But like you said, I just don't know that he's worth the transfer, worth the risk. But maybe it's the Barkley thing where he's due a return in 2 matches. Worst case scenario is getting 4. So if you're not taking a hit to bring him in, I think it's a good shout. But I don't know that you'd take the risk if you're taking a hit too, because then he's just going to cover himself, right?
Yeah, I think the thing I'd say for all of these is even if the first transfer is free up front, like these guys are going to become problems because they're not players that you would buy for single game weeks. So you need to also think about like the transfer out or who you can get or want to get as a result of bringing this player in. It's great if you bring in a Barkley or Tavernier, whoever, for a double. They might get you 8 points, something like that. 1 return across 2 games, great. Then you've got to deal with getting them out because they're not good single game week picks. Yeah. You might be looking at a -4. You might screw up your team structure. Like there's something to be said for selling out for these double game weeks, but I think you also just need to be cognizant of future planning too.
You got to have an exit strategy, and you can't succumb to double game week fever.
Right.
Can't want it too much. Sometimes you luck out though with no exit strategy, right? You get Kelleher on your bench for like 7 weeks, and then he's back in the good graces of the starting 11, and he's returning left and right for you. So sometimes that works out.
Well, even in that situation, like Kelleher's a guy you can leave on your bench, and I think that's fine.
Yeah,
from like a team
goalkeeper's different, sure.
Team planning standpoint, if you could get Tavernier, then based on your team, you could just bench Tavernier, from 33 to 38, fine. But most likely that's not going to be the case for a lot of the outfield players. Jace, let's move on to a score that I think made you very happy this weekend. Spurs 3, Palace 1.
Oh, yeah.
What did you see? We talked a little bit about it, but what did you see from Son this week? I'm super curious to hear your Son at 9 thoughts.
I saw a really lackluster performance in the first half. But one thing I did notice about Son is his movement was incredible in the second half. I mean, he created the space for Werner to score that goal, and I think he should have gotten the assist for it. Because if you go watch that back whenever we're done, and you'll see, I mean, he makes a run, comes back, makes another run. He's got two defenders on him that are looking at Sonny. Werner just sneaks in the back post, slots it home. So I like Sonny. I think he's playing really well. I think the only issue is we did hear from ESPN Brazil that Richarlison is going to be back in contention for the starting 11 against Villa. So I love Sonny. I don't know that you're going to get a much better player when he's playing at the 9, but if he's on the wing, we're not going to get the same returns that we saw this week. It's just not going to happen. That's not how it plays. So it really depends on what we hear from Postecoglou in the press conference before the game.
I will say Spurs, after Villa away this week, have Fulham. They do play in 29, as we talked about. Luton, West Ham, Forest. And their fixtures kind of turn
really good fixtures.
In 33. Man City, 34. Arsenal, 35. Liverpool, 36. So Son is a great pick until 33, probably.
Don't forget about Chelsea after that Liverpool match, too. I mean, our run-in is one of the worst you could ask for in the league, right? So what game week did that City match start in, Chris?
34. So like 34.
Yeah, so I think you want to get off them. Get off them around 34. But I think Brennan Johnson is a good shout here too. We don't want to forget about him. Again, if you're deadening your team, right, and you want to find players that are going to play in 29, even if he is not starting, he has shown that he's going to return. He had 2 returns off the bench last match, right? And then he's popping up again. I think he got both the assists in this match too. So I feel like he's a really good differential and he's going to play. So I don't know that he's where I'm going, like we said, if we're taking a hit, but something to be said for Brendan Johnson. Postecoglou can't keep him on the bench if he keeps returning like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you feel about the second Spurs guy I was looking at was actually Maddison?
Yeah. I think he's not in the form that he was in earlier in the season. My issue with him is he doesn't want to get involved early enough in the match, right? We saw it in the last match. We saw it in this match where if he doesn't get the ball and get in a position to get the ball deep enough in the field, he's not going to do anything with it. It seems like he's hiding for the first 45 minutes, or he's getting fouled enough to where he wants to stay off the ball. But an informed Maddison, he's not going to let you down. As we saw, he got that great chip for Romero's header there for the go-ahead, and he's going to be involved in most of the plays, but I just don't know that he's there yet where I want to bring him in. I don't know that he's worth the money, because I think he's in that weird price bracket now too, isn't he?
Yep. Yeah, he would probably be a 2-week rental if I went that direction. I think the thing
great free hit player.
Sure. The thing that I'm worried about with Spurs is that Richarlison comes back, Son goes to the wing, and Maddison is not as effective with Richarlison at striker, and then Richarlison's maybe out of form, and then I'm not getting kind of the best out of any of the Spurs assets, where if I knew Son was at 9, I think I have a lot more confidence in both Son, obviously, as one of the best picks in the game, and in Maddison. But now, maybe if Richarlison's back, maybe it's somebody like Bowen, who doesn't have a good fixture in 29, plays Villa. So attacking wise, that's okay. But Spurs have Luton, which is a much better game.
And we've shown we can score against them down a man. So I think the other thing you got to look out for is where's Kulusevski playing, right? If he's playing on the wing, that takes up a winger slot. And it doesn't look like we've been effective in the attack in this latter half of the season, unless he goes into the midfield and plays with Maddison as a more attacking role. So I think he takes up a lot of space over there, and you just kind of gotta watch what Postecoglou says at the presser before this match.
Yeah, and I should just a correction. Spurs play Fulham in 29, play Luton at home in 30, which if I went Spurs, I would probably hang on to that second asset probably through game week 30 as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. One more thing. Speaking of Chelsea, we're going to talk Chelsea Brentford next, but I just had to tell you that watching Timo Werner one-on-one and on goal, I mean, it really took me back to the goal.
He made up for it. Come on.
He did. And you know what's hilarious is he's such a guy that you want to root for. He tries so hard. You want him to succeed so bad, but eventually that resolve will crumble and you'll just be sick of it. So I just want to welcome you to the Timo Werner experience. I think it was a great showcase this week.
I'm a Timo stan. I'm in. I hope we keep him.
Was he 15 million? I bet you guys will.
Yeah, 14, something like that. Yeah,
it's not too bad.
Absolutely. So back to Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea 2, Brentford 2. My kind of question here was, I think some people are going to think about Palmer out for a player that is playing in double game week 29 or somebody double game week 28 or somebody that has a fixture in blank game week 29 like a Tavernier, Louise, Bailey, etc. I still think Palmer's a keep, but I want to hear an outside perspective. You have him as well, Jace. I mean, what kind of are you thinking?
I told you, I think I'm going to hold on to him. I've got a lot of value tied up in him, and I think he is such a dynamic player for Chelsea. He's their player. He and Gallagher are vying for player of the season for Chelsea, right? Mr. Chelsea, who wins the pageant at the end of the season, we'll find out. But if you look at their upcoming fixtures, right, you've got Newcastle, and then you've got Burnley, and then you've got United, and you've got Sheffield, and Everton, and Brighton. I mean, the fixtures look great for him to return. So I think he's the only Chelsea asset I want to be on, given the positions, competition everywhere else in my team right now. But I think he's a keep if you got him, especially if you have value tied up into him. If you bought him and he was $5 million or anywhere in that range, and you want to buy him back later, I think that's fine. But to me, I'm never going to recover those funds, so I think he's a hold, especially if you were in early.
Yeah, Burnley game week 30. I mean, that is the ceiling there is massive.
Sheffield, come on.
Yeah,
Sheffield. Even Chelsea can't fold in front of Sheffield. Come on.
I'm gonna have to clip that and post it after the Chelsea Sheffield game. Last thing here, Tony looked terrible, so I'm keeping an eye kind of on him. He does have Burnley in 29. I mean, he's probably getting benched this week against Arsenal, but I'm hoping that Burnley game will kind of be the turning point.
It's the same thing for him as Maddison, right? He couldn't get the ball in a position where he could do something with it. He had to come so deep into the midfield to get it, and then he's again assisting the assister. He's not getting into the goal mouth or on the ball in a shooting position where you want him. So I don't know what moves Brentford are making to force him to do that, or maybe teams have just figured it out, right? And they're forcing him to come deeper. But until that changes, until that style changes and he goes back to being more of a striker, I think, he's probably not anywhere close to my watch list right now.
The last thing, speaking of bit forward positioning, I did just want to say that Reguilon popped up in the box multiple times, which was not something I had seen necessarily from him before. Also had a header off the post. The assist that he had was a deflected shot in the box as well. So not this week because he's away Arsenal, but the week after, I think he's a great pick for the rest of the season, which we've talked about ad nauseum. But I just want to say, eye test too, like positioning wise, he was definitely in attacking spots.
My problem is he's just going to lose his temper. He gets a card every game. He's going to get suspended. I mean, if you want to keep taking that risk, that's fine. Like you said, you're just going to bench him, and you can do that. But I don't know. I feel like his magic's running out.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm also pissed because he posted a pro Manchester United story, even though he's contracted to us still, and we are their main competition for a top 4 slot. So fuck you, Reguilon. I don't know if I can say that. You might have to bleep me out.
I've got the explicit tag. I think we're good.
Oh,
I wasn't going to do a podcast if we couldn't curse on it. That would be like fucking ridiculous, right? I mean, can you imagine?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So
anyway.
Fuck Reguilon. Moving on. Next match, Newcastle 3, Wolves 0. RIP Wolves assets, game week 26, 2024 to game week 27, 2024. If you own Hwang still, which I think a lot of people transferred him out, or Neto or Sarabia, like what's the plan this week?
Yeah, I think you got to move them. They didn't against Newcastle too, who I guess were due some, some bounce, but at the end of the day, they've been conceding more goals than almost anyone else aside from Sheffield, and you can't put one away. And I don't even know that they really looked like they were going to score. I mean, did you watch this one?
I watched some of it. I was more surprised by the Newcastle clean sheet given their form. But yeah, it didn't seem like from the underlying numbers that Wolves were really generating a lot. I mean, maybe this is the maybe this is like the Tavernier play or the Barkley play, especially if your bench is bad. Maybe you say, okay, I'm just going to downgrade from Neto to Barkley, which enables a midfielder to Salah in game week 30. Kind of if you're thinking about it, then you get the extra fixture. But woof. That was a tough, I think, sort of literal gold rush because of the jersey color to Wolves assets and just a complete flop. One thing I wanted to mention on the Newcastle side, Isak. I think there's going to be an Isak moment. I can kind of like feel it on the horizon. He's healthy. Callum Wilson is still out. The run-in for Newcastle is incredible. And it's right around the time that the fixtures for Watkins and Solanke turn. So I think you're going to see a lot of Watkins to Isak and Solanke to Isak over the next couple of weeks. Just want to keep an eye on. I think if Newcastle are back, Isak is an incredible pick for the stretch run. Let's bookmark that.
And when he's healthy, he is on penalties. So
yes, on penalties and consistently one of the highest like XG creators in the league, like per 90, like just an elite striker.
But I saw that stat though. He is the highest scoring striker without an assist in the Premier League.
I mean, the guy knows how to score a goal.
He knows his job.
I don't know what more do you want for him, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Moving on from Newcastle, Arsenal 6, Sheffield United 0. We just watched this game this afternoon. We're trying to figure out, I think, who the three best Arsenal assets are, because clearly they're one of the three best, if not the best team in the league. Saka's one, we know. Gabriel is... If
he's good to go, he might be injured.
I think Arteta maybe said like an illness or something. They took him off. It doesn't seem to be serious. Let's assume for this conversation, healthy Saka number one, right?
All right, healthy Saka number one.
I think Gabriel is the obvious number two, because he has offensive threat on set pieces and clean sheets. Number three is where I think there's a lot of debate. Like, who do you think the third best Arsenal pick is?
I have recency bias, right? But Havertz playing in the role that he's playing right now is okay. It seems like he's involved in almost every build-up. Part of me wants to say Martinelli because I really like Martinelli as a player, no matter how much that pains me to say. But there are only certain teams that he's going to return against. Seeing today who those teams are, right? Those types of teams. Some will say Odegaard. So I think Odegaard or Havertz are going to be my pick for the third, and I'm going to lean more towards Havertz because he's probably more of a differential right now.
Okay, no Saliba.
What do you think?
No second defender.
Saliba, no, I don't. You can't have. I don't think you have both the center backs. I don't like that strategy.
Okay.
The odds of them both returning in the same game. It happened like once this season. I get people are all about Saliba. I think there are better center backs out there. For me, I think you got to stick with the attackers. Because they're not going to get a clean sheet every week. We just saw it. We talked about their pictures earlier. They're not going to get a clean sheet every week. And that only works when they get a clean. And we've seen Arsenal lose the clean in like the last 5 minutes multiple times this season. So
it's been one of my favorite things to watch as a non-Arsenal owner. Yeah, I was looking at the center backs. Like I said, I think Gabriel's a great pick because he offers offensive threat. And I've been trying to pick defenders with offensive threat because clean sheets are down across the board. Like, I think just defense is generally worse with the additional time added on this year. So Branthwaite from Everton, who's I think now 4.3, but was like the OG, 4.0 defender this year, has 77 points on the year. Saliba has 110. So Branthwaite is only 33 points behind Saliba, which works itself out to about 1.2 points per week. So sure. I don't know that there's a ton of like marginal utility in a second Arsenal defender because none of them have attacking threat outside of Gabriel. So I agree with you there.
Yeah. I think Gabriel's right. He's always so good for a jammy assist once in a while where he'll get the ball in the back, he'll find Saka, and then Saka will run, do all the work, score, and Gabriel gets the assist, right? So
that reminds me of the stupid end assist last year where Mitoma dribbled through 5 players, I think.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think he like barely touched it to him at like the halfway line, right? And then he just took off and dribbled through the entire team.
Yeah, which was hilarious that was an assist. But regardless,
R.I.P. Mitoma.
I think Havertz is interesting. It's just minutes, right? With Jace coming back and Trossard also able to play the 9. I'm just not. I think if I knew Havertz was started at 9 every game, I would agree with you that he is the third best pick. But based on minutes, I'm going to say Odegaard. He has the second most bonus points on the team behind Saka, which kind of is an indicator of his influence on the game. He's averaging half a goal involvement per 90, which is pretty good by FPL standards. That puts him in like the Pascal Gross and Jared Bowen tier, a little bit behind Foden. But he's 8.5 for those numbers, and I think you might as well have Saka or Son. So that's why I think it's been hard to get 3 Arsenal players. You know, if you have, I think FPL used to be, right, it's like 3 players from the 3 best teams, and there's a lot more variety this year because positionally and price wise, you know, some players just don't quite fit.
If I'm Arteta, I actually pray that he does replace Havertz at the 9 with Jesus, who has said himself goal scoring is not his strength, but as a striker, I mean, come on, because they're going to bottle the league if he does that. But I think you're crazy if you change anything you're doing right now with this Arsenal attack. I mean, what they've averaged 4.5 goals over the last 4 games, and you're telling me, like, I don't see him changing it. And Havertz is 7.1 right now, so I could downgrade Martinelli to Havertz, save myself 0.6, and then invest that somewhere else. So that's the only reason I think he's the 4th, because he enables you to make the 3rd. Sorry, because he enables you to make those additional moves. So.
Yeah, I think for the price, that's an interesting point. It's tough, right? Odegaard is nailed, but 8.5. Havertz is maybe not nailed, but 7.1 to your point, which is tricky. All right, moving on to the last few matches of the week. Liverpool 1, Forest 0. I'm really sick and tired of the Liverpool narrative because honestly, they're terrible right now without Salah and Nunez coming back, and they were lucky to beat Chelsea, Southampton, and I think Forest in this game as well. Salah, we think, is going to be back against City. Are you considering Salah this week, or are you going to wait till game week 30?
I can't afford Salah this week, to be honest with you. So I'm going to wait until the wild card and play around, and maybe that's where I invest downgrading a Martinelli to a Havertz or make some moves like that. But Salah's going to have to show me that he has to be in my team, and Klopp's going to have to show me that he's going to play, right? I think, as I've said before, the kids are all right at Liverpool, and Klopp knows that. He's not afraid to play them. So I don't know that he's rushing them back right now because let's look at Liverpool's upcoming fixtures. They've got City next, so I think obviously Salah's going to have a part in this game. But then they've got Everton and Brighton, and yeah, I don't know where the minutes are going to come from for Salah and how much time he's going to get. So I think I'm just going to wait until that wild card in game week 30.
Yeah, I think everybody needs a plan for Salah home Brighton game week 30, which is why I was talking about the double game week, transfers this week, right? It's really important for the Salah week in game week 30 that you have 2 transfers in the bank, or at least enough money in the bank to get him back. So last thing in this game, I just want to shout out Gibbs White and Taiwo. They play in game week 29, and Forest has an incredible run in. I think they don't have an FDR above 3 the rest of the season, and mostly 2s. It's like kind of ridiculous. There could be a moment. It's going to be one of those 2 players. We don't know like which one, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is in a lot of teams before the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely going to rent one or both of them on a free hit in 29.
Yeah, for sure. Next game, West Ham 3, Everton 1. My question here was Bowen versus Spurs mid in game week 29. The kind of key considerations: Bowen plays Burnley this week, but he has a worse game week 29 fixture against Aston Villa. Spurs play Villa this week, but then they have a better game week 29 fixture away Fulham, and you could possibly play them in 30 against Luton. How would you compare Bowen to, like, let's say Madison this week?
It all depends on where Bowen's going to play, and as we mentioned, there's some outlying circumstances that depend on whether he's going to return or not, right? And i.e. who's going to start in the midfield in supporting. So I don't know. I think we got to wait, make sure everybody's healthy, but I'd still probably back Sonny over a Bowen. I think I think Sonny's a better long-term play with better fixtures up until 34.
Yeah.
And I'm biased. I'm not afraid to admit that.
Sonny definitely is. Sonny definitely is. Yeah. It's more like the second mid.
The Madison thing. Yeah, and I get that, but I just don't. To me, Bowen's probably more likely to return more than Madison, but like I don't know. You can have both, right? If you're free hitting, but for those of the that aren't free hitting, I don't know. I would still probably think Spurs are more consistently gonna score given our 34 game streak of scoring every match. So I don't know that Westfield. I don't know that West Ham. Shout out Westfield, Indiana. I don't know that West Ham is gonna score every match. So just something to think about there. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Maybe you're wiser here than I am.
I'm torn. We'll talk about it in the transfers, but Bowen is more integral to the team's offense. He's the talisman, but Spurs are a better team with a better attack. So those are kind of the two considerations I'm thinking of. And if I did go Bowen, I would have to go Bowen this week, which means I would probably take Foden out away Liverpool for Bowen home Burnley, which given Foden's form is also difficult to justify, or I could roll and do 2 frees next week. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Last game, Fulham 3, Brighton 0. This might be the first time we've said this in a while. Are there any good picks for Brighton after Gross is benched and they have terrible fixtures coming up? I mean, I think there's literally no one.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anyone that I'm picking from Brighton that I have confidence that's gonna start, let alone return. You know, even the goalkeepers. I mean, it's kind of crazy how inconsistent they are with injuries and all that. But Fulham, on the other hand, there's still some enticing strikers there.
Yeah, should we have the Muniz conversation? I'm actually going to say too for Brighton, Adringa 5.0 is going to be in everybody's Brighton double game week team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Muniz,
he returned like I said he was going to. I feel like we got that one. I got that one right. Even though I didn't take my own advice, which I should have. But 11 points. I mean, he hauled.
Yeah, I can't figure out if it's sustainable. I mean, he's not going to score every game, but is he going to score, every other game? Because he does play in 29. But I think too, like I mentioned earlier, if there's a case for 3-5-2, like he's the obvious third striker in that formation right now. So he will be in some teams. The question is this like the Jimenez purple patch we saw earlier in the season where he was on fire and then we've never seen him again?
Yeah, but he because he was injured though. I think him being on fire and now Muniz being on fire, like that shows that that Fulham are playing good attacking football, right? There are returns to be had there. Muniz is 2.6% owned.
Yeah.
He's got Wolves, Tottenham, Sheffield.
Yep.
Next 3 fixtures. I mean, there are goals to be had there, right? So I'm definitely leaning towards Muniz. It's going to be one of those where it's like I bring him in and then he doesn't return, right? And it's super annoying, but I think he's playing really well. He's getting in the right positions. So something to consider. Definitely going to be in my free hit team in game week 29.
Yeah. I think he's one to keep an eye on for sure. And he will probably be in a lot of game week 29 teams. Although I could see, Watkins, Iwani, and who's the other big striker that's playing in 29? Morris plays in 29. Tony. Watkins, Iwani, Tony. Does he get in over any of those 3 in a free hit team?
Iwani, absolutely, yeah.
Iwani, okay.
Yeah.
Iwani against Luton?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm dug in. I'm dug in here, Chris. I'm dug in.
Next week we'll do our free hit team, so it'll be a lot of fun too.
There we go.
Awesome. So that's every game from last week. Hopefully we had some takeaways. I think we have some strong takeaways for sure. So let's move on to transfers and captaincy for this upcoming week.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
All right, Jace, who are you thinking about this week? You have 1 free transfer, I think 0.3 in the bank, and you are free hitting in game week 29. So this is essentially a 1 week punt transfer here. A unique opportunity.
I'm renting.
Yeah. Who are you thinking?
I think I'm going to send Burnout for Doughty. That's going to be my main play. The question is, do I bring in a second, take a -4 and bring in a second player from either Bournemouth or Luton? And that's what I want to ask you, Chris, is which one do you think I should bring in if I do bring in a second double game week asset? Because right now I only have Solanke and potentially Doughty. So who's going to be my third double game weeker?
I mean, if you're taking hits and you like Muniz and you want another double game week forward, you could have a front line of Solanke, Muniz, Morris, and Doughty. Then that would be a -8 to get there, but then you would not have to free hit in game week 29. So like all the players you're telling me that you like,
I get what
play
you're
in
saying.
29.
Yeah. That's a fair point, but I'd still have to take the -8 to get there.
Sure.
So again, something. So you think I should just go all in and not free hit in 29 and just bring in the players this week?
I think that you're telling me that you really like Muniz, you really like Spurs, and you really like Morris too. Or maybe that's me projecting Morris onto you. But I'm just saying, like, you have one transfer this week. You could take a hit this week for Doughty for sure because he doubles, and maybe Morris is your hit because he doubles. Then you have one more free transfer next week where you could grab somebody that plays in 29, and you're going to wildcard 30 anyway. So you wildcard 30, then you still have your free hit for game week 34. I think that could be interesting. If you can do it with just a -4 and you can get to 8 players in 29, I would definitely think about it.
Yeah. All right. Doughty's definitely a lock though, right?
Yeah.
I want to make that move early. Yeah. Because I have to. Otherwise, I won't be able to afford him if his price rises.
Yeah. No, I will say with Doughty, because Bell was hurt, he was playing left center back for a little while, but he was still on all the set pieces. So I think still a good pick for me.
All right. So you think I definitely move Burn on though, because Robinson plays in 29 and I want to leave that lifeline for myself if I don't want to use the free hit.
Yeah, because you have Robinson, Leno, Son, and Udogie and Watkins. You have 5 players. 29 already. Getting to 8 is only one -4. You had 2 transfers and a -4. You have 1 transfer this week and transfer next week.
I'm making the Doughty transfer live on the pod right now, locking it in, Chris.
That's really exciting. This is going to go horribly wrong.
All right. Well, those are the only ones I'm considering. Captaincy wise, Solanke on paper, right? But that depends on if I bring in Carlton Morris. Want to wait. Definitely paying attention to the pressers, seeing how he's feeling. If there's any indication that he's not going to be okay, because he looked pretty lame in this match, right? He didn't really look like he wanted to run until the second half when he got close to scoring. And he's like, okay, maybe I do want a goal this game. So I think I'm going to wait and see what the prognosis is from the manager.
Yeah, something we didn't talk about earlier. Would you triple captain Solanke this week if you had the chip?
No, I don't think so. I think you wait for a future Man City double, which we all know is likely going to come. Yeah. But I get it. It's Sheffield and it's Luton and it's 2 of arguably the worst defenses in the league, and I guess they're both home. Yeah, that's a tough question. No, I still don't think I do because he's been injured. And like I said, what he showed me in this last match, I didn't really see the fire there that was going to go score even 1 goal per game. So no, I don't think I triple captain him, but it's a good way to differentiate yourself if you're feeling froggy.
I think I would. It's a fitness issue for me. If he was totally healthy, I think I absolutely would. Yeah. If Areola comes out and says like, yeah, he's good to go, I think you do it. Just because yes, City, Liverpool, some of the other teams will have doubles later in the season, but the title might be settled. Champions League might be settled by then. There's not really an expected minutes guarantee for those players later in the season. Whereas Solanke, we know he's going to play now, kind of pending what Areola says. So I would triple captain him. I think Solanke's the captain this week. Obviously, you hold Watkins, and then your transfer is probably Holland to Morris. If I were you, that would be the second one for me, which we ironically talked about earlier in the pod. But I think that makes a lot of sense for you if you were going to play through. For me, I'm also considering moving Holland out this week for Ollie Watkins because Watkins would cover game week 29 and game week 30. I can't decide if this fixture away Liverpool is bad for Holland or actually good for Holland. He's returned in most of his previous games against Liverpool, and they are depleted from an injury standpoint right now. Whereas Watkins plays Spurs, who as we know, are super attacking. They're a good team, but there are goals in that game. What do you think? Would you go Haaland to Watkins this week, or would you save it for next week?
Tough question. I think there are goals in both the games. Spurs are not solid defensively. The only difference is that, I guess they're not a difference because they're both away. So, I'm not going to be any good to you here, Chris, because no matter which one I tell you, the other one's going to haul, because that's how these things work out.
Yeah,
but if you're going to get rid of Haaland anyways, but again, I say the odds of Watkins doing another double-digit return are not. Come on, he's got a blank eventually, right? So just like Haaland has got a haul eventually. These are two inevitabilities that we just have to consider. So I think you probably stick with Haaland and then move him out next week.
Okay. And then the other transfer I'm considering, I have one free this week. I'll probably just use one transfer, is Foden out for the same reason, for a mid that plays in 29 that I could conceivably transfer to Salah in game week 30. So we talked a little bit about it, but I'm thinking about Bowen, Maddison, potentially Morgan Gibbs-White, because I really like the Luton fixture in game week 29. But I think given where Forest is at right now, that might be a little bit of a stretch. So I'll need to do some more thinking about particularly Bowen versus Maddison in that spot.
I definitely would get rid of Haaland over Foden, I think.
Why is that?
I think because Foden's been the big game hero this season for him, and this is a big game, right? This is for the title, essentially. I mean, there may be other factors in the run-in, but I mean, come on, this is for the top spot, right? So I think Foden is going to come up bigger than what Haaland is, just based on what I've seen this season. Foden wants to score, and he's going to put the team on his back and do it. So to me, if I was in your position, I would keep Foden over Haaland. If you're bound to get rid of one of them.
Okay.
That's just kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting take. I had kind of thought about it the other way, where Foden was probably the more likely transfer and Haaland was the one I was considering waiting a week, just because Haaland's so highly owned. If he does play well against Liverpool, that's very damaging, but you could say the same about Foden. So
I was going to say, I mean, if he doesn't, come on.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen it recently.
Yeah. The other option here is just to roll, and then I would have 2 frees. I would make both of these moves next week.
That sounds good to me.
Rolling always sounds good in theory. And then, the player that you don't get scores all the points. But
you said it yourself to go play it as it lies in game week 29. So
that's true.
I might as well do it now.
That's true. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening and to playing it as it lies, the theme of this week's podcast. Just a reminder, please rate, review, and subscribe to our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. We are a new podcast, so reviews and ratings are definitely appreciated. Follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads at FPL_freehitpod, and join us next week to talk blank game week 29. Take care.